Hello, and welcome to the Scott Mize Show, a podcast focused on health, diet, bodybuilding, and philosophy. I interview experts, doctors, coaches, and N=1 case studies to answer your questions about improving health, achieving your best physique, and making sustainable progress. We'll cover topics from carnivore and ketogenic diets to bodybuilding to life philosophy and everything in between. Enjoy the show. This episode is brought to you by LMNT Electrolytes. This month, we're switching it up with an exclusive offer that's only for VIP LMNT partners, including Carnivore Cast listeners. You can now receive this free sample pack along with any regular purchase when you use my custom link, which is provided in the show notes or my Instagram link in bio. That's drinklmnt.com/carnivorecast, all one word. And as I said, I'll include the link in the show notes. LMNT Electrolytes are convenient, evidence-based, and delicious, and get yours today to help support the show. Thank you. This is a quick disclaimer before we start the show. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said here should be taken as medical advice, and please consult with your physician before making any changes to your diet, exercise regime, or medications. Thank you, and on to the show. Kennedy Colossus Ken Anyanwu is an IFBB pro bodybuilder, overall and heavyweight champion at the 2023 NPC North Americans, and animal athlete. He's also a regular on Fit Nation podcasts with Baidi Farl, Zade Raslan, Stu Sutherland, Joe Palacios, and others like Nick Walker. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I'd love to just start with your background. When did you start bodybuilding and why? What got you into it?
So it's when I look back at time, it feels like it was just yesterday, but dude, it's been forever. I was pretty much in high school, and my first introduction to the whole thing was Dexter Jackson. So I was online, like everyone else. How do you get big? How do you grow big muscles? And if you remember, this was back in the early internet era. Wikipedia was the place, right? Like if you search something, Wikipedia is the first thing that comes up, and it was Dexter Jackson and the Mr. Olympia. And I took a look at it and I saw the picture, and I was just stunned, right? I feel like with bodybuilding, people, there's two, when you see bodybuilding for the first time, just from what I've seen from myself and other people, there's two reactions. It's always two distinct reactions. It's either you're enamored by it, and you find it so fascinating, or you find it grotesque and disgusting. You never want to see it again.
Yeah.
Right. So I was in the first camp, and I couldn't sleep at night. I was like, wow, a human being can actually look like this.
Yeah.
So I started doing my research, and I fell upon Pump and Iron, the movie. And pretty much from there, the rest is history. I was like, I followed the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding. That was the first time I took that book. I took it with me to the gym. I was doing the 2-a-day training in there,
Wow.
and, eventually, I guess, down the line, I found myself now in my 30s, at 30 years old, I'm still doing this, from that kid in high school. So, yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I really wish I had gotten into it that early. It found me later in life. I'm 31 now, and I just did my first show. So just getting started. But
hey,
yeah, it's cool.
I think with bodybuilding too, it's not really when you start as much as the mileage of how much you beat up your body. You know what I mean? So I think 30 is still a decent place to start. There are a lot of successful pros. Justin Shire, for example, started in his 30s. You know what I mean? And he's gonna have a successful career. Like there's no way about it. You look at him and you can just tell, right? So I think it's just the mileage on the body, and then you have people that start when they're like 15. I didn't get enhanced till later in life, but like people that start and then they go straight into the enhanced route, and by 28, 29, you're done, you're kind of burnt out. So it all depends. It all depends on where you start, I guess.
Yeah, it's well said. Yeah, definitely. And how many shows have you done? So when was your first show?
So I don't want to get in trouble here. There's only one true organization, all the other things is just play before that. You know what I mean? Like, so I competed naturally in the OCB, at IPL, like around 2015, 2016. and I did take overalls there, my first two competitions. But my official bodybuilding, because those are the McDonald's leagues, the NPC and the IFBB, that's where it's at. If you're in the other leagues, guys, you just stop, just come
What
over
are you
here.
doing?
So I started in the NPC right after COVID. And I've done 3 competitions so far. Delaware championships. That was my first one. I was a heavyweight there. And I took overall and first place, heavies. And then I went into nationals next year, which was my first national show. It was not the best. I came 8th in the heavies, and then North Americans, which I came first overall.
Cool.
Turned pro.
So you didn't do what time of year is the Delaware champions?
That's usually around June.
Okay.
Around June time. Yeah. So sorry, before North Americans, I qualified in New Jersey. I did in New Jersey States.
Oh, okay.
So I came first and overall in the heavies, and then I went to North Americans and turned pro. Yeah.
Cool.
So four shows, right? I think that's
yeah.
Yeah.
So your second year, you didn't do a qualifier; you just went straight to nationals.
Yeah. So the whole premise, right, was take a year off, because at that point, Delaware. When I did Delaware, I was a heavyweight, but I knew that I wasn't ready for nationals, to be quite honest with you. So I needed to take a year. So people watching, when you have a full year after you come top 3 in your prereq show to do nationals. So if you come top 5 in 2021, you can do nationals the following year. But after that, it kind of supersedes everything, right? So
is it a full calendar year? Is that
full calendar year?
Okay, so you can't. So I did my qualifier in April, so I can't do nationals next year because they all come after April.
No, you can. You can.
Oh, I can't.
Nationals was December, and I did North America. I did Delaware in June. So the next year of Delaware and nationals, I was still allowed to qualify.
Okay, cool.
So you can.
So it's more than one calendar year.
More than one calendar year. Yeah.
Got it.
I think they just take it because, like when you do the IFBB and NPC, the way they do it with the membership, right? So even if you're let's say you're competing in December and you have to pay for your NPC membership, they still scope it out all the way to January, right? You're paying for that 1 month. So that's just how they do it.
Cool.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was the prep prior to the 2023 prep? Like your first time at nationals, what was that like for you? The good, the bad, what did you learn?
Yeah, I've never said it out publicly, but that was not the best prep, to be quite honest with you. So going into it, so like I said, we took the full year in, Delaware. After Delaware, we took the full year because I needed some size. I figured I still needed some size to actually match up with the guys at the national level, because I had never compared myself to anyone at national, the national ranks. So we did a full off season. We took about 5 months of off season, and then we started the prep towards late June, July. So pretty much after July 4th, we kind of we cleaned out, and then we started to slowly come down. And then we went into the prep, like I would say sometime around late August into September.
Cool.
Right. The prep itself, that was my first time prepping in the winter. So winter preps are very different from, like a summer show prep, right? The holidays, it gets dark early. You're pretty much like you work, right? So you're pretty much just a night owl.
Yeah.
The only thing you see is darkness, right?
Yeah.
For pretty much months on end. So yeah, it was, we got it done. The problem with that prep was just overall, I just felt that like the things that I needed attention with just weren't there. There were just a lot of complications, getting into Florida. Like it was my first show that I had done outside of the tri-state, where I actually had to fly and travel. People don't talk about these things, till you actually have to do it. So, the little things, just like, my hotel, the hotel that we were sanctioned for the actual show, they don't have any kitchen, right? And you're there for like 4 days. What are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
So you got to get yourself, like, if you don't get a hotel with a kitchen, first off, that's mess up number one, right? You got to always find a hotel with a kitchen. I didn't do that. Number two, I had to use, like, we got like one of those camp one stove things, the
Yeah, yeah,
electrical
yeah.
heaters. Yeah. And just getting around, and just overall, I think my coach at the time was also prepping for that same show.
Mm,
So, we're friends. This is not a slight on him at all. Um, and I understand, you're both five, 5 days out from a show. You're both flying into Florida. You're both trying to accommodate. He just didn't have. And now I look back, hindsight. He just didn't have the time, or the emotional capacity to uh, be able to handle someone else during that specific time as well. So it was a lot of burden,
yeah.
on him. And it's not like he was coaching someone in classic physique. We were both going into the heavyweights in the same class,
Oh, wow.
so he was competing against me, essentially. Right.
Yeah.
Um, so there was just a lot of problems going into that show, and I just didn't get the as a new competitor, being in such a new landscape, a new experience. I didn't get the guidance that I really needed at that specific time. And I think it showed, because flying into Florida, I was 230 pounds. I was a heavyweight. I already signed for the heavies. So that means that I got to be 225. I got to lose 5 pounds in 2 days,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
So there was a lot of stress there, trying to make the weight for the actual show. And then the weigh-ins are usually on Thursday. So the Friday is for the women at nationals, and Saturday is for the men. So there was already a lot of problems. I didn't fly in on time, so I didn't even get time to, like, acclimatize to the environment. So there was just a lot of stress. It was done like a noob. There's just no other way to say it. I showed up like a noob, and it showed. I
Mm,
wasn't prepared, and it cost me. That's my lowest place and I've ever placed in a bodybuilding show. Period. It cost me. So,
wow.
yeah.
And so coming out of that, like, what was your mindset afterwards? What did you do next? And how did that lead into 2023 for you?
So I'll be completely honest with you, Scott. That show was the first time I've ever been in a second call out situation,
Yeah.
and I had a very bitter taste in my mouth. So my whole national experience, we talked about my prep getting to there. My whole national experience on stage was 30 seconds,
Wow.
complete 30 seconds,
Wow.
because the first call out came out. I wasn't in the first call out. The second call out came out. I wasn't in the second call out. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm third call. I guess I'm one of the last 50 guys over here. The
Yeah.
third call out came out, and I didn't come out. I'm like, where am I in this show? Did I not place? And
Jeez.
then for the second round, right after the group comparisons, the second round, they bring me out into the second call out, right? I do a front double. They switch me to the other side. I do a back double, and that's it. That was my nationals.
Wow.
I hit 2 shots, and that was it. So I, backstage, the judges pretty much told me that, if I had come in conditioned, the show was mine. I wasn't tight enough. And a lot of people, said the same. My biggest worry at that point, I'd never been to a national show, was maybe I'm going to be one of the smallest guys, in the heavyweights, which
Mm,
it's right now we kind of, people are a little bit more used to me. It's kind of stupid to think, right? But at the time, I was like, wow, I'm going to be one of the smallest guys here. It was actually the opposite. I was one of the biggest guys, right, in the heavies at that show. So the game plan after that, personally, I'll be honest, I wanted to take a full year. And I said, screw it. Maybe we go super, right? I mean, it's bodybuilding. You just keep going up. But I knew that, one, like I explained with the situation, I knew that I had to change some things in my camp too. I won't recommend having a coach that's also doing the same show as you, or at least competing in the same, in the same cycle that you are.
Yeah.
So personally, I knew what I was looking for. I wanted someone who was at least not coached, who wasn't competing anymore, for starters,
Yeah.
who kind of knew what they were doing, right? So I started looking around, and Suleos, as you kind of know him on Instagram, I reached out to him because we're friends, we're friends. So I asked him for advice, and he told me that he actually told me that Andrew Vu was pretty good. And I'd known Andrew, for a while in the industry, but I'd never spoken to him. So what Suleos did was he gave me Sid's contact information, Sid Rai. So Sid Rai is also another national level bodybuilder. He's probably going to turn pro this year. He came third that show, actually.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Great guy. And I spoke to Sid, and Sid basically gave me the TLDR on Andrew and how he coaches, and the things he hates, the things he likes, the things you do and you don't do. And I was like, all right, I kind of like this guy, So I spoke to Andrew after that, and pretty much I was gonna be like, let's do a full off season and go into the supers, the upper year for nationals. And he was like, no, we're doing USAs. I'm like, USAs is in June, dude. That's like 5 weeks, 5 months from now. And but then I calculated, right? USA's, it's in Cali. I'm okay, but I'm not. I don't feel like the expense to go all the way there, and it's quite a trip, right? It's quite a trip,
Yeah.
and the time was just a little bit too short. So we finally agreed on North Americans, which was about I think 6 weeks from the USA's. So that was the show that we kind of agreed on, and we did a very short, very very short off season. It wasn't even an off season, I would say. We just cleaned out, for 2 months, and then we went right into prep, and the rest is history.
That's great. And a lot of questions come out of that. First, I'll just say Sid is great. He helped me with posing a little bit before my show.
Very
just
nice.
in like one session, he made some major changes, and he was also just a really, really nice guy.
Oh yeah.
Really like
Sid. Oh, he is. He does my posing too. So
cool.
Sid does my posing. So everything, it kind of, after a while, you get your training camp, people who Sid is my posing coach, essentially. So he posed me for North Americans.
Cool.
I'll tell you, Scott, I thought I could pose, but my posing was garbage. He had to work everything from scratch, from the foundation up. So definitely, if you guys watch this, definitely hit up Sid for posing. He knows what the hell he's talking about.
He's also hilarious online.
Yeah.
Like, he'll get into it with anyone. I was reading this post. It was like Bodybuilding Without Borders or something had reposted what Terrence Ruffin had said about ERS. And he was like deep in the comments with people, like getting after it. Like, it's funny.
I call him, he's a moth to a flame. I tell him, like, dude, like, you always say that the drama looks for you. I like, no, you look for the drama.
Yeah.
You're the moth to the flame.
Definitely. Cool. And so, talking about Andrew Vu, what has that been like? What's, other than doing the same show as you were doing, what are some of the top things he changed for you regarding training, diet, PEDs? Like, what was different working with Andrew?
I gotta be honest, Andrew changed my perception of bodybuilding. He changed. I think, like, when I look back, when I first started with him and where I am now, not just physique, I mean, mentally, psychologically, he changed everything from the ground up. Like,
cool.
I felt like I was just starting this from scratch, from the very beginning. I felt like an infant, and I did not know anything when I joined up with Andrew.
That's cool.
My first check-in with him, the first thing he said was, "Your posing is garbage." It was the first thing he ever said to me. That's after funny. We officially signed that contract, that your posing is garbage. And I didn't even, how could you tell what you're doing wrong if you don't even know that what you're doing is actually wrong, right? So he fixed everything. My posing, we started working on my posing from scratch, and he teamed me up with Sid to do that, right? My training, I moved from I was always a 6 a week kind of guy from the very beginning, 6 days on, 1 day off. He moved me to a 3 days on, 1 day off split.
Yeah.
Um, so that helped tremendously. He also changed my training split. So uh, my quads and ham days, he split those apart, and he put in 2 back days for me, just because my back needed a little bit of thickness, and then changed some exercises around there. That was another thing. Uh, Third thing, psychologically, uh, I'm not the most confident person in my own bodybuilding abilities, right? I think that part of the problem with being a fan of the sport, before you become a competitor, is that ceiling always feels very unachievable,
Yeah.
you know? So I look at a guy like Dexter Jackson or Phil Heath, and I look at myself and I'm like, I could never get there. You know what I mean? These people seem like pseudo gods or demigods in your psyche, right? Versus a guy who doesn't know who these guys are, gets into the sport. They're just another man
Yeah.
to compete against, right?
Yeah.
So the mental angst to go against people like that is very different. So psychologically, he kind of had to work on me a little bit to start believing in myself a little bit, that, like, listen, dude, you have a physique that's pro worthy. Like, how could you not see this? Like,
Yeah.
everyone tells you all the time, how could you not see this? And that took a while. It's still taking a while. I'm still facing that battle now that I'm going into the pro ranks. I'm like, oh man, I gotta go against, the Nick Walkers and these guys. Like, am I good enough? It's coming back, but it's a lot better than how it was in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you've proven each step of the way that you are
Yeah.
deserving of being up there.
Yeah.
It just takes time.
Yeah. No, it does. And then, PDs, I would say relatively, it didn't really change that much, to be honest. Um, he brought down my gear a little bit. So for nationals, I actually did a grammar test for nationals. We actually did only 750 going
Hmm.
into North Americans
Wow.
throughout, right? And then just the standard stuff, the basics. I always say the basics: mass, trend, the basics, right?
Good old Ronnie Coleman.
Good old Ronnie Coleman. So he brought those down. So I would say, gear wise, from what I've seen just across the board, I don't think people are doing. I don't think there's anything special from, everyone's doing the same shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's unless you're talking about the super new school, the guys who believe in mass drone. I'm not going to get into that debate, but unless you're talking about those specific guys, a lot of the standard routes for, cycles and stuff, it's relatively the same, across
Yeah.
the board with most of the guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people are always looking for the next big drug, the thing that's gonna.
Yeah.
They think pros are doing some crazy drug they've never heard of, and they're always seeking
Yeah.
that out. But it's really, like you said, just the basic stuff that works.
Yeah. The pros aren't even doing farmer, guys. It's just the basics, man. They're
Yeah.
doing the same shit you're doing, dude. Like,
Yeah. So talk about North Americans and winning North Americans. What was that journey like for you? Talk about, getting there and, all the feelings and how it, the result too.
so
And I'll just share your Instagram too while you're talking.
yeah, yeah. So when I got to North Americans, uh at that point, I had a very, very strong feeling that, I was the top of the class, because at that point, Bodybuilding Without Borders, all these, pages, even Fuad, I was, they were talking about me on the podcast, and like, I was the guy to beat, at North Americans. And going into the heavies, um, the only other guy that I knew that was doing the show that could be, be close was going to be Jamal Muspa. And the year prior at nationals, I had come eighth and Jamal came ninth. So even when I was off, I had already beaten Jamal.
Yeah.
So I knew that, at least for the heavyweights, I was going to be fine. The only other person in the show, and you probably had him on already, Elias.
Yep.
Elias is a Jersey guy. He was in Jersey here, so I talked to Elias, and we'd been together for a couple of times, so I knew he was going to be in the show. I just didn't know how we would both stack up next to each other, because I had never seen Elias compete, and he'd taken all this time off. So that was the only other person that I was like, okay, I think Elias is definitely going to turn pro into supers. We just have to find out how we both stack up. But I got to be honest, by the time we got there and, I peeled off, that morning when we were in the hotel room and I peeled off, you know, my girlfriend looked at me and she was like, holy shit. Morgan, she sees me all the time.
Yeah.
She's unimpressed. She's never impressed with anything. That morning, she said, holy shit. And I was like, yeah, we're fucking on. That's what I knew we were on.
Yeah.
So, going to the show, I was pretty calm. It's such a contrast to Nationals of 22, right? This time I was well prepared. We had a place with a kitchen. I actually brought my own food with me. Right. That's something people don't know. Shout out to Ben Chow, because I actually learned that from Ben on the Fuad pod. I froze all my fish and everything, my tilapia, every single thing. I froze it, put it in a trunk, and then we flew over there. I didn't go to the grocery store over there. I had all my meals and everything with me. So, we got to the hotel and it was just business as usual. It was like it was like we hadn't even switched places, So it was a very, very seamless experience compared to the year before, and just getting there, I just felt like this show was definitely something that I had a good chance of at least winning my class. I just didn't know what the overall was going to look like, because 2 weeks before that, I had competed in the New Jersey States, so I had gotten a chance to actually see myself, compared to the year before, and even I realized, I was like, okay, holy shit, like this physique is definitely going to be hard to beat this one, even to myself, I was like, wow, I didn't realize we had made that much progress in such a short time. And that's when I realized that, okay, maybe we can really do this. Maybe we do have a shot at winning this whole thing.
Cool. That's awesome. That's such a great place to be going into a show. And that difference in preparedness too, I'm sure made you feel very at ease.
Yeah. And one thing too, Scott, is like, you kind of know, if you go to a show, you'll kind of know, as I know you did your first show, and I'm so sorry I missed it. I really wanted to go.
Oh, don't worry about it.
But you kind of know when everyone is backstage and people are pumping up, and that guy who's just sitting there and he peels off and everyone stops and starts looking at him. That's the guy winning the show. Okay?
Yeah.
There's no way around it,
Yeah.
It was kind of like that, it was kind of like that. And that's how I kind of was like, okay, you know what? Maybe we do have this in the bag,
Yeah. That's awesome. And then what was winning like for you? Like, how did that feel? What was going through your head? Like what did it feel like to win and get your pro card?
It didn't register till I got back home. So this was 3 days later.
Yeah.
That I got back home, that it actually registered. We talked about it before, right? How when you're a fan of the sport first, these things seem so magnanimous, right? So I'm not trying to slide in your other division, but becoming a pro in bodybuilding in a heavier class, like a heavyweight or super class, it is a big deal,
Yep.
And then let alone winning the overall in bodybuilding to get your pro card, which was the old way it was done, is even bigger, right? So no one sleeps on the night of after the show. No one does. I tried. I couldn't sleep. Your Instagram is buzzing. Everything's going off. I didn't sleep, but it didn't register till I got home, and I was like, wow, you have a lot to be proud of what you did here. this is someone that 12 months ago, going into nationals, he didn't even think that he was capable of even being a pro, or being amongst a top call out on the national stage, let alone be a pro. And here you are, with the overall title and adding your name to, guys who have won that show, Nick Walker, Dexter Jackson, the same guy that I first saw won that show and turned pro, so everything came full circle for me. And it was kind of like, wow, like, you know, maybe you do have a little, not maybe just a little bit of talent to do this. Not that much, but just a little
Yeah.
bit. And yeah, it felt great, man. It felt great. It lasted, that feeling lasted, it hit me 3 days, and that feeling lasted for about 2 weeks. And then the reality set in that, like, all right, you're at the bottom of the ladder again. You
Yeah.
got to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I definitely want to get into that and like the next goal too. But before that, would love to ask you just a few questions about kind of how you approach some of the things in bodybuilding. You mentioned, Andrew, changing up your training split, but what is your approach to training like? Like, are you more of a high volume guy, more of a high intensity, fewer sets? How do you like to approach training?
I'm a high volume trainer. Uh, it's what I did in the past. It's what worked even when I was natural. That's what worked. I
Yeah,
was, that's what worked back then, and that's what's still working for me now. So the whole
cool.
model, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Right.
Yeah.
I know low volume training is kind of the deal of the day these days.
Mhm.
But for me, I've always just benefited from high volume training. So, what I do is I train as heavy as possible. So it's almost like a Jay Cutler style,
Yeah.
right? So like as heavy as you can go for, 4 sets, you warm up, you have a lot of warm up sets to that point. You hold that weight for 4 working sets, very minimal rest times, and just keep hammering it. A lot of
Wow.
compound movements. I don't really use a lot of machines. I don't even have access to a lot of machines, being honest, but based on where I train, so it's very old school. It's a very old school style of training.
Yeah.
Uh, but I enjoy it. And I think my physique benefits a lot from that kind of
Yeah.
style.
Yeah. Well, it also makes sense with who you drew inspiration from, right? Like Dexter
Yeah.
Jackson, definitely a high volume guy. And that's the way most guys did it back in the day.
Yeah.
So very cool. And what is diet and cardio like for you? Do you do higher protein? And like how high do your carbs get and how low? I know you've talked about it a bit on Fit Nation that you don't need that much food, but what does your diet look like?
Yeah, you have the Stu camp here, and then you have the Baidi camp here. I'm in the
Yeah.
Baidi camp over here,
Okay.
right? So, so I diet like a bikini chick, essentially, right? Even now in off season, I still do about 45 minutes of cardio 5 days a week.
Okay.
So, uh, during prep, I was doing my highest was about 95, 95 to 100 minutes
Wow.
towards the tail end of the prep, like 4 weeks out. And then food got really low. So I would have maybe like 150 grams of rice, for like three out of my 6 meals. And the other
Cooked.
three,
Right.
yeah, cooked. And the other three would just be like, veggies and kind of just fish, right? So
Wow.
just veggies and fish. So I was basically eating nothing,
Yeah, really low.
towards the tail end of prep. So I really have to diet hard. But I also think part of that was, I think, up until that point, my off seasons weren't I hadn't had a very structured off season where,
Mm.
like, for instance, now I just mentioned the cardio and stuff, actively trying to push the food a little bit higher. So, and also, keeping the cardio in. That way, I at least have my metabolism going. I can process a little bit more and probably just work on my metabolism a little bit.
Yeah.
I think there is room for improvement on there for a guy like myself, and that's why I preach very heavily for guys like me, like Beatty, to do the cardio in the off season, because I think we benefit a lot more from doing it that way versus just full blown off season, lower back pumps all the way to 300 pounds. It's just
Yeah.
not. Once you start to strip that off, you're gonna have to really suffer. And in a prep, managing your fatigue is very important. If you have to really push super, super hard, it shows a lot on the physique. The physique kind of looks tired, right?
Yeah.
And I always joke about this. You don't get that healthy look, when you're in a prep. You don't want that, you want to
Yeah.
look healthy. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely on one extreme, and my calories didn't get below like 3,500 in prep. And
Jesus.
I was doing like 25 minutes of cardio a few days a week. And yeah, it's nice during prep, but now that I'm 4 weeks post show and, over 900 grams of carbs, it's a lot.
Hell. It's hell.
Yeah.
I think, and like you said, I think you suffer on one end of the spectrum. So now in off season, I'm 260 pounds, but I'm eating like, you would eat on prep. I have 300 grams of rice per meal.
Yeah.
For me, that's a lot, but
yeah,
for you, it's probably like nothing, right?
Yeah.
It's probably nothing. And I'm growing just fine, but
that's nice.
Yeah. So in the off season, I don't have to push as much in order to gain muscle, which is kind of nice. But in the preps, man, that's where it's like, but look at it this way. I look at it this way too, right? You spend more time in an off season than you spend in prep.
Yeah.
So maybe in hindsight, maybe it is better to be a little bit of this way, suffer for about, 16 to 18 weeks. And then the rest of the time you're relatively okay. So
yeah,
it's a give and take, gift and curse.
Yeah. And I think, like for me, my body clearly doesn't want to be like 250 plus pounds. So it's definitely a curse, I think, more than it is a blessing, because like if you have to push food that high that long just to keep growing a little bit, it's hard. It's hard.
It's almost like, and it's almost like for people like you, right? It's almost like you have to do the low volume because high volume just means you burn more, which is not really advantageous to someone who has to push so much food.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the right training style essentially for the right body as well. I think that's something people don't talk about.
Point.
Yeah, that's something people don't talk about a lot, but I think it is somewhere that, it's an avenue that I think people still need to actually explore. If you're someone like me, there are benefits to how the physique looks, but it may not be that much more beneficial to do a low volume style for someone like me. You're burning way less. So in prep, you may have to do even more cardio or diet even harder. And the same way around for you guys, right? If you're doing a high volume style, you may have to push food a lot harder, which, could may not be as advantageous. So that's something people don't talk about a lot that I think is very interesting that I think about sometimes.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And how high does Andrew push protein? Is it like super high, or, like 50 grams of protein per meal? How much protein or how much meat are you eating per meal?
So I eat about 10 ounces per meal.
Okay.
So
it's pretty high.
Yeah. So 10 ounces of 10 ounces of meat per meal. I think I have 2 meals, 2 or 3 that it's about 7, but usually it's about 10, pushing about 10 ounce. Yeah.
And then one thing that I think is really interesting is you work a corporate job, right?
Yeah.
How has that been for you, balancing that with bodybuilding? Because, a lot of bodybuilders are, quote, full-time bodybuilders, and, maybe they do coaching, they have sponsorships, but they're all in on bodybuilding 100%. What has it been like for you to continue to work a corporate job and balance that with bodybuilding?
There's pros and cons, right? I'll start with the pros. The pros is that you're able to dissociate. I don't know about you, but I think it's a little bit, I don't want to say unhealthy, but it could lead to burnout a lot quicker in this, to be everything your whole entire life. You're your social circle, your day-to-day 9 to 5 job, everything is just bodybuilding. You have no other outlet. I think that could be, lead to a lot of mental burnout for people a lot of times. So the pro is that I get to dissociate from this a lot of times. In fact, that the one time I do get to do talk bodybuilding is like this, right? On a chat
Yeah.
with you, or, with my boys on Fit Nation. Most of the time it's just training and eating, but there's not really bodybuilding circling my life outside of that. The cons is you have to have a balancing act. So it's never going to be balanced between the two. You're going to have to prioritize one over the other depending on the season. So for myself, when prep time comes, work is here, right? And the prep is here. That takes priority. So if I have to travel, if I can avoid a trip or something, the prep is what stands, right? Versus in the off season, I'm a little bit more flexible, right? So if I need to work on a certification study, I'm actually working today, compared to like a prep, I would be out right now doing cardio or something. So I'm more flexible to my job, if you will. It's hard. There's no way around it. But I think that a lot of times when people talk about bodybuilding full time and doing training, the one pro that you have from that is, your time is yours. You have full autonomy over your own time,
Yeah.
which, when you work a job that you're not the business owner, you do not, So I am fortunate though, compared to a lot of people. I work from home. I work, I work a desk job. I work in IT, so I'm not really using anything physical. It's all up here, right? So I'm not really fatigued. It doesn't affect my training or my eating as much, just because I get an opportunity to do this in a very comfortable setting versus if I was doing construction, or something like that. So the balancing act is there. I would say the people that do want to do it, I think that the job also matters, right?
Mm.
If you're someone that's going to be a pilot, for example, I don't think you can bodybuild as a pilot.
Yeah.
You're going to be flying from place to place. You're not going to be eating meals flying a plane, six
Yeah.
times, So the job does matter, but I also think that, let's be completely honest with ourselves here, Scott. You live in New York. Bodybuilding doesn't pay the bills, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like unless you're some guy with 500K followers, and you have a full roster of athletes that you're training. Financially, it's not really long term. I'm talking long term. Financially, it may not be the move. Do you have a 401k that you're saving to? Like, you have health insurance. These are things that people don't really talk about from a bodybuilding perspective. It's always
Yeah.
about the now, but they're things that working a standard corporate job give you down the line, long term, that just doing the bodybuilding and training thing, if you're not successful, I'm talking if you're just a standard, you have a standard training just like everyone else, that you're kind of missing out on, that you don't think about now till later down the line.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's really well said. Yeah, one of the things I feel very fortunate and blessed about getting into this later in life is I do have a very stable, successful corporate career. And like, I'm married. I have, a nice apartment and starting a family. So I feel like a lot more stable versus like where I was in my early 20s.
That's awesome. What do you do by any chance?
I work in mergers and acquisitions. It's called corporate development and corporate strategy for a tech company.
Dope.
I've done it for a bunch of different tech companies. So yeah, desk job, just like you said, using my brain. And yeah, I mean, I started my career in management consulting, which, talk about a job you couldn't bodybuild and do at the same time, is working 90 hours a week, flying every week, stuck in a conference room and who knows where for 14 hours a day with a team. It was not a place where you could do bodybuilding.
Yeah.
But that has set me up now to where I can, I work from home. I can go to the gym pretty much when I want to. I have stable income. I can afford bodybuilding. So it's definitely worked out.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad you said that, because people, when this conversation comes up a lot, people they're not being honest, with the situation at hand. Like it's nice, and coaching, especially when you're dealing with the commodity of people, that is very flexible in terms of highs and lows, right?
Yeah.
If you're in a holiday period, you may have good clients, or let's say your career itself is going up competitively. You may have a lot of, clients. If your career is kind of down, you may not be seeing anything, right? It's not very
Yeah.
stable as an income source. And we all know this is very expensive, and we're all grown adults. We kind of, there are certain things you need as an adult, like a safe place to live, uh, you know, different things, right? That I think that a lot of times we, unfortunately, even being a pro, you're not guaranteed these things to chase bodybuilding. So I always tell people, I have kids that come up to me in the gym, they see me. The first time they see me, they automatically think, oh, this guy just bodybuilds. That's all he does. It's like, no, I'm like, kid, stay in school, man. Like,
Yeah.
it's not guaranteed. It's not,
Yeah.
it's still not guaranteed for me. I don't know if I'm going to make it to the Olympia. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, till you get to that point, where you can now have the flexibility or the opportunity to pick and choose, with the income stream is almost relatively the same, then you can make that decision. But
Mm.
I think it's a little bit risky to make that decision beforehand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And talk about the animal sponsorship. First of all, congrats on that. It's awesome.
Thank you.
I love
Thank
Animal.
you.
It's such a cool brand going back decades. What did that mean to you? And talk about that a little bit.
Kind of same thing, right? That I told full circle, like, people you looked up to coming up, the black and white Brian Moss photos with Evan, Frank McGrath, Frank Hauser, Jason Haw. Like, these guys are magnanimous names in the industry now. They're achieving legend status at some point. You know what I mean? So for me, for Animal, to be quite honest with you, the way it happened was quite a surprise. So they're based in New Jersey here, of course, and I know one of the guys I actually reached out to me, like we were speaking on Instagram just randomly. I didn't even know he was one of the Animal guys. Like, he works in their sales, and he was like, "Oh, do and then we were talking, and I think I just mentioned, like, "Oh, it'd be cool to work with you guys at some point in the future." And he's like, "Wait, don't you have a sponsor?" Like, he thought I was sponsored, I was like, "No, I'm not sponsored. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just doing my thing." And he was so shocked. He was like, "You know what? I'm going to put you in contact with them. If it works out, we'll see what happens." So,
Awesome.
Scotty, this deal this is a part of the business of bodybuilding that people don't talk about. Like, I'm just learning this part myself. This deal started in January. We've
Wow.
been we've been talking about this since January. So it takes a lot of time to work these deals. And a couple of people have said this here and there, like Stu, which is why we love him, right? He's so transparent. Like, when he was in talks with Hostile, for example, that took a long period of time. You
Yeah.
have no idea until it happens to you, right? So this happened in January, negotiating back and forth. And basically, I liked what, what the company, I've always liked Animal and what the company is about and where they're going. And for me, I wanted a company that I can grow with. So, Animal is one of those companies that it's kind of like you kind of grow with them with your career, right? Like, they're a career company. I'm not someone that likes to jump from place to place. You know what I mean? So I told
Mhm.
him, like, listen, I want a company that if I make it to the Olympiad someday, you guys have been there since the beginning, right? The
Cool.
grassroots, to be able to show that journey, tag along for that journey on the ride. And the products are great, Ken
Yep.
15, if you like Animal, Ken 15. All right.
And
Products
15.
are great. But essentially, it's not just that, but projects. One thing Animal's always done is, they used to bring out a lot of these educational, informational videos for people. You know what I mean? And that kind of fell a little bit towards the last couple of years. And I was like, listen, I want to do that. I think that would be really cool. I was that kid in college that sat in my dorm and watched Get Big on a Budget with $100 in his pocket. And I used those videos to actually try to get big on a budget. This was back when there wasn't that much information on this kind of stuff out there like it is now. So we have a lot of informational stuff coming out soon that we're actually going to be shooting.
Cool.
And I just want to kind of use an opportunity, bring them along for the ride to kind of showcase my own bodybuilding journey. And hopefully at some point it inspires some kid like me who didn't think that they had what it took to actually do this. And maybe you never know, that kid, not me, I don't know about myself yet, but that kid may be the next Mr. Olympia, 20 years down the line. Who knows?
That's awesome.
So,
that's so cool. I'm really happy for you. And it's really cool to see you part of that family. And what's the bodybuilding scene like today in the Northeast from your view? Obviously it's changed a lot in the last 20 or 30 years. And there's these bodybuilding hubs now, Texas and Vegas and a little bit in California, but what's your view of what it's like today in the Northeast?
Dude, it's dying, man. I worry about it. Worry about it, dude. I worry about it, and like you said, everyone's gone. Everyone's kind of, gone to these little spots in Vegas and Texas. New York was the hub before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All these guys, everyone was in New York, all the competitions and everything. And that's kind of, we're in a dire situation, Scotty. That's the best way to put it. We're in a dire situation. I'm hoping, don't quote me on it, but I feel like Nick Walker may stay. I'm hoping, with Nick being in Jersey, that could kind of stir the fire again, for East Coast bodybuilding. And, like newer people coming up like myself, Akeem is doing, phenomenal now. I'm hoping that these guys can kind of be the catalyst to kind of bring it a little bit more back to the East Coast. Because back then, we used to have a lot of cool things. Like Dave Palumbo used to do his Two Bros Pro event. There were a lot of gym community things that happened that kind of spurned that culture, right? Spurned that bodybuilding culture here. And I feel like all that is gone. We have like in Jersey, for example, right? Like where I'm at, there's almost no bodybuilding. You have to go to South Jersey. That's where all the bodybuilding is happening right now in Jersey. It's pretty much in the South. There are new gyms popping up here and there, like Lifter's Lair and PSA, really cool gyms. And Aries, he's based down in South Jersey. So he's doing a lot of stuff for the community down there too. But yeah, I just feel like, man, East Coast bodybuilding scene is dying. And listen, if you have ideas to revitalize it, I've been thinking about it. I want to at least give back in some way to the East Coast. So if you have ideas and you want to, collaborate and tag along, maybe we can set something up in the future. I would be down for that.
Yeah.
We definitely need something over here.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. Northeast has a lot of good things going for it. Like we have a lot of good gyms. We have a lot of good shows. Steve Weinberger, obviously, putting on tons of great regional and local shows. We've got the New York Pro. I think we just need the athletes here.
Yeah.
It's really what it is.
Yeah. And part of it too is it's not their fault, right? Like, I mean, cost of living in this place is damn right. It's a damn right, nightmare these days. You know what I mean? So I understand why people choose to leave. And let's be honest, the weather sucks, outside of the summer.
Yeah, that's one thing. Cost of living and weather that places like Texas and Florida really have on us.
Yeah, dude. So I get it, but I do think that kind of like the state of Cali right now, we're kind of approaching that state. Like for example, if Bev's gym was to shut down today, I don't think it ever will, but hypothetically, if it's shut down today, the East Coast is dead. Bodybuilding on the East Coast dies automatically. So we kind of need, as the new generation coming up, we kind of need to keep that fire alive over here, and see that this continues, because a lot of great bodybuilders have come from come from these parts in the last few years. And, it's up to us to keep that going, or, in the next few years, you're going to be, I mean, when have you ever heard a bodybuilder come from Vegas? People move to Vegas, but when have you ever heard like, oh, this guy is originally from Vegas and now he's competing at the Mr. Olympia? It never happens, right?
Yeah.
So, we I feel like in the next few years, if we're not careful, that's kind of where these things are kind of going to, and we're kind of going to be left in the dust. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's the goal now? Like, you stepped off the stage at North Americans. You're not competing this year, correct? What's your next goal, and what are you working towards?
So right now we're still in the off season, which, I posted it in Serious Discord. I posted my progress.
Shout out to Serious Discord.
Shout out to Serious Discord, man. And M Cho and John Effer, you guys are great. But right now it's still the off season, right? So just pushing the off season, keeping it going as much as we can. I don't want to give myself a weight of what we're going to get to, but I think 270 is in the cards, at least 270. Sit there for a little bit, and then towards the end of the year we'll start to clean out and kind of come down. So I'm thinking New York is definitely going to be a debut for me. But I don't know if I'm going to do, I was talking with, Sid and I were just discussing this hypothetically the other day. I don't know if I want to do Detroit or I want to go after New York, because the problem is if I say like I do Detroit, I would have to end at New York. But if I do New York, I can keep going. So
unless they move the timing.
Yeah. So I'm still trying to play it out, but Detroit is definitely one that I probably want to try. And Chicago, I got to hit up Chicago, bro. So
yeah.
Cool. So we'll see.
And the goal is what's your goal for your open debut?
Quite honestly, top call outs. Your trajectory for bodybuilding, especially as a pro, your first show kind of sets the tone for your career, right? So for me, it's top call outs for nothing. I'll be honest with you. Like if we don't make that top call out, I don't know what I'm gonna do, Scotty. I'll be honest, because that just tells me that you don't got it. Like you're done. So top call outs.
Nice.
Icing on the cake would be to win a show, my pro in my rookie year, but that's not a typical occurrence. It's Nick Walker has ruined it for everyone. General target population always thinks that if you come out of the gate and you don't win a show, like it's over for you. But that's statistically that's not usually what happens, right? So
even the best, even Cutler,
I mean Quentin, Carlos, they haven't won shows. Jordan Hutchinson hasn't won a show. These guys are phenomenal bodybuilders, So I'm hoping at least top call outs. Top call outs, at least that means that you're knocking on the door. And potentially depending on who shows up, as long as it's not a top 10 Olympian, maybe I have a chance, at maybe one of these shows and maybe, win it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I'm so excited for next year with guys like you and Elias and all these serious national competitors who got their pro cards competing next year after taking a full year off season. It's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah, man. I don't know what show Elias is doing, but I wish I would love to compete with him again, man.
Like, yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be super cool. We don't have a rivalry or anything. It's kind of like with Joe, Joe Palacios too. Yeah. It's not like a rivalry. It's just we all are in the same class. So it's kind of like it'd be really cool for all of us to kind of watch each other, compete together and grow. So yeah, Elias is a phenomenal bodybuilder, phenomenal guy. So I'm hoping he does a show that maybe me and him were able to do together again, just like North Americans.
Yeah, maybe Zade too. That'd be awesome.
Zade's on that 2-year plan. He's still hitting up them D balls. He's
taking his time. Good for him. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Ken. Really appreciate it. I've got to know you a lot better, even after listening to you on Fit Nation forever. And I'm sure the audience has really enjoyed it too. Where can folks find you and follow along? And I'll have links to everything in the show notes too.
Yeah, of course. You can always find me on my Instagram page, Colossus Ken, Colossus_Ken. Don't hesitate to reach out. I pretty much answer people as long as you're not, being weird. I'll answer you and talk to you. So you can reach out to me on there. And, of course, Scotty, by the way, yourself, are you going to be at the New York Pro?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I'll probably see you there, in person.
Yep.
So it'd
Cool.
be great to finally meet you in person as well.
Likewise. Yeah, I've got a couple guys from the Serious Discord staying with me. So it'll be really fun.
Oh, dope. So that'll be awesome. That'll be awesome.
All right. Thank you for listening to the show. You can find the Scott Mize Show on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Please leave a comment, like, review, or share the podcast with your friends or followers. It helps more people find the show.